Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this November 16th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can catch my show every evening. That's Pacific time at 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday. They also play the show at 11 a.m. Pacific time, so don't miss it. But if you do, go to my long-standing website at arcticbeacon.com. Well, folks, the selection or the elections are over. Trump, of course, is the president-elect. And I'm spending this whole week, Monday through Thursday, and possibly Friday, interviewing and talking about a subject that's very dear to my heart that I've been covering for over 8 years. And that is the persecution of a Christian ministry, the Alamo ministry. I think over the years, I've gotten to know many of the people at the ministry. I've gotten to know Tony very well. And it's an issue that I think is important in this election. And let me explain why. And by the way, I have Greg Seago from the Alamo ministry with me today. Yesterday, I had Bert Krantz. Tomorrow, I have Deborah Andrasek. And we're going to get to every issue we can so that the main reason for this show today is to really show you that this ministry has been persecuted. Also to lead you to a website called freetonyalamo.com that I started, which will take you then to a petition that you can sign to get this man out of prison. He's been there since 2008 for crimes he hasn't committed. I've said it a long time ago. The reason he's there is because he wasn't afraid to talk about the beast in the book of Revelations and Daniel and bring together what's really the problem in our country, and that is the Vatican control of foreign and domestic policy, as well as their influence worldwide to create a one world order, a one world religion, which is stated in the Bible. And all of you Protestant ministers out there who have come under the umbrella of the Vatican, Tony, a long time ago, as well as many members of the Alamo ministry and myself have said, that could be the main problem here. Now, we're going to bring this story really up to date. Yesterday, I spent time with Bert going over the history of the persecution of the ministry. So go to that show. That was yesterday, Tuesday, the 15th. Today, I have Greg Seago on, who's been traveling to all of the Trump rallies, and I'm not sure, maybe the Clinton rallies too, and he's got a story to tell about really what's going on in America today and what they were doing at these rallies and what these rallies were showing to him. I'm going to get to that in a minute, but let me explain. Please go to that petition, and we're going to try to get as many signatures as we can. Now, Trump was elected with the highest evangelical Catholic vote in modern times. A president-elect has never gotten more votes than him from the evangelical community. He's also stated in his campaign and in many speeches that he realizes that Christians are being persecuted. He also stated that he is going to get rid of the Johnson Amendment, which is what Lyndon Johnson did to muzzle Christian pastors and pastors in our country, putting together this. If you want 501c3 money and tax-exempt status, you cannot support a candidate or talk politics on the pulpit. It's a muzzle that Trump said he's going to take out. He's also said he wants to see Christian pastors speak their mind. No other pastor in this country has done that truthfully than Tony Alamo, who sits in jail because of the Clintons for 175 years for crimes he hasn't committed. Let me read this to you really quickly, and then we'll get to Greg. I'm taking a paragraph out of a book I read a long time ago called The Enemy Unmasked, and a man by the name of Bill Hughes had stated this. He said, "It's obvious that the moral fabric of America today is where the morality of the Roman Empire was nearly 2,000 years ago. Don't you see a breakdown of the home, a deterioration in the school system, moral decay as espoused by the news and entertainment media, the schools, and the welfare eating the heart out of America? With regard to these problems, how are we any different from the Roman Empire during its decay? why are these things happening in America? But that's the wrong question. The question should be, who is orchestrating these things to bring America to the brink of destruction? Now, I'm going to say this right now. Tony Alamo told us that way back in the 80s, and this ministry is still telling us that. That's my intro to you, Greg Seago. How are you today?
Doing great, doing great.
And just comment on that, my last statement. The question is, who's orchestrating this thing to bring America down?
Well, of course, we go straight to the Bible and to our personal experience. The Bible tells us of Mystery Babylon, Revelation, that is the mother of harlots and abominations. They're constantly detracting this Vatican regime from any Orthodox fundamental Christian. That's their goal, is to destroy all real Christianity because it exposes the Roman Catholic false religion. They don't go after the Sleepy Hollow churches and the ones that aren't really going to do anything about what the Bible says. And the Vatican has been at work for centuries to bring down freedom of religion, freedom of press, all mankind's freedom, and to bring them into bondage to this one world government. And they're busy about that, and they do it secretly. They're very, very mysterious. They're very clandestine. And the Vatican pinpoints who it is. They have their motives. They have their agenda. It's a war between God and Satan for the soul of man.
Now, Greg, let's go to what you've been doing lately. Now, we've talked about the ministry, how the raid in 2008 was a three-prong approach to wipe you guys off the face of the earth here. One was to put Tony in prison, which on false charges. Two was to kidnap all the children, which they've done. And three was to take away all your property. Now, Bert pointed out a real interesting thing that I missed through the years, that they had done this once before and wiped all your properties away, and you built it back up. And now they wanted to do the same thing. But you guys are still there, still going out, preaching the word. Tell us about your experiences with this presidential election, because you told me on the break, or before the show, that you got involved in this one more than most, and you've been traveling almost nationwide following these campaigns, passing out literature. Tell us your experiences. I'm really interested in this.
Well, I did follow all the rallies from the time of the primaries in about an 8-state radius close to me, and I was there for the Bernie Sanders, I was there for Kasich and all the Ted Cruz, Hillary, Trump. I was at all the different rallies. President Obama held rallies. I went to all of them, and I got a lot of course, mixed reactions. People are very much caught up into politics, but I can tell you across the board, people at Bernie Sanders were extremely progressive. They were extreme left-wing. They were outspoken atheist, outspoken anti-God, anti-Christ. Hillary rallies were, in some areas, very hostile toward the gospel, but not always. And North Carolina was a little different response. But the Trump rallies, really, they were a lot more receptive. They listened a lot more. There were a lot more grassroots Americans. When it was explained to them what this literature is about, it's not political, because a lot of times they think you're trying to sway them to their political beliefs. No, this is not political. This is regarding our pastor and our ministry. They put our pastor in prison, as everyone knows, for 175 years on false charges. They've taken our children away, our homes, our schools, our churches. The reaction, is mixed. A lot of people they don't care as long as it doesn't affect them. So what? But many people said, hey, that's what we're all headed for. It's here now. It's at our front door. We knew this was coming, but they've kept it secret pretty much from the rest of the country. And a lot of people were very supportive and really wanted to know the details. They wanted to go online and sign our petition. That many people had read it, because we ran into a lot of the same people from rally to rally. And they were just like, wow, people that had gotten saved in a house that the pastor owned in Florida. Hey, I got saved at that ministry. That's where I met the Lord. That's how I came to know Christ. And I've been saved ever since. And it's been many years. And I just thank the Lord. I know Tony Alamo got shafted. And, but the outcry of America is not really what it should be. The outcry of Americans should be, you see all these demonstrations from one political party against another, and Trump's not my president, when really the real issue here is there's a war between God and Satan going on. And America needs to really genuinely repent and change its ways. But our reaction was that of great support from many people. And, we were out there, hey, shaking it and making people aware of what was going on. And a lot of people, we passed out hundreds of thousands of literature nationwide, our ministry did, on this here recently.
Yeah, and you know what I found out? I know the effort had started 40 years ago to try to silence you. And I remember doing a show a long time ago quoting John Paul II when he was still alive. And he basically stated that, and I'm paraphrasing here, that he said that it seems that the problem in America it seems like all the churches are getting together under the umbrella of the mother church. And the only problem we have is these splinter churches, these groups that don't seem to fall in line. And that will be our goal, to win them over. And if we can't win them over, then we will try other means. So the other means was to either imprison Tony and other ministries I've checked out that have received the same IRS problems, the same persecution. That's what the Pope was talking about. It goes over the heads of the American people. When you guys get this information to them and you start talking about the Pope, what is their reaction still to this day as they're going to these rallies?
Well, the Vatican has covered their tracks very well over the years to make sure that history doesn't show, it's not presented to children, all the clandestine activities of the Vatican down through the centuries. And many people are just blinded to it because it is Mystery Babylon. And because the Bible refers to it as the beast that was and is not and yet is. It's very invisible. That's where they learned. Ignacio de Loyola, the first Jesuit general, taught the Pope, it began with one of the Pope Pauls, that how to go behind the scenes and do things not so much in the open like they did back in what is known as the Dark Ages. Because during the Renaissance, people were waking up to, hey, this is a very wicked organization, and we don't need all this horrible influence in our country. And they were being thrown out of countries all around the world. The Vatican was. And so the reaction of American people today is just like the Bible says in the last days, that all, A-L-L, all the nations will be deceived. But there are still many people that are still very hip to what's going on and are tracking with this very, very much so. And they're like, wow, this is amazing that there's people still willing to take a stand. Many of them have known these truths, but have been afraid to speak out, and it's giving them much boldness to make a stand. And they go about their means to silence us, and I tell you what, it's just getting hotter and hotter and hotter. When they did a raid on us before and took away our businesses, our pastor, and put him in prison, they took away our homes and our churches, the ministry still stayed together and was fighting on. We're not fair weather friends. And this time, that's why they went after our children, was to scatter the church, because we still remained as a core the last time, and we came back stronger than ever. And that's why they went after our children and everything this time.
Exactly. And one thing, staying with this idea of realizing who the Pope and the Antichrist system really is, I believe that is important for all Christians to understand. Now, let's talk about it in two terms here. The first way to get to that, like, for example, I like to look at personal experiences too. I was born a Catholic, Then I strayed away from Catholicism, became an atheist, which is very common amongst many Catholics. But I ended up as a journalist questioning everything from a secular point of view. And I ended up in Rome to see the beast firsthand. So I learned about the beast and the Pope and all of their nefarious activities through their money laundering and their hiding of the Nazis, their connections to the CIA, their connections to terrorism. And I saw it firsthand in Italy, as I was almost killed there by a terrorist bomb, which was placed in a newspaper by CIA connections. Now, here's the deal. I was lucky enough to learn about the Pope and what he was like, but I had no idea about Christianity. So Christianity to me and the Bible came second, and that was very important. And many of you people have helped me to read the Bible. Now there's other people that come through it a different way. Many Christians in America go to these Protestant lukewarm churches, but they never understand who the beast really is. And I don't think you can be a complete Christian unless you do. And that's why your church has been targeted, because of those beliefs. Am I off base there? And comment on what I said.
Oh, it's a bullseye. You remind me of Avro Manhattan, who he was sort of very carnal. He wasn't carrying the torch of Christianity. He was just making objective statements of observations that he saw the clandestine activities of Rome. And you cannot have the one without the other. And you're right. Professing Christians today are so far from knowing the truths of the Vatican that it's too controversial for them. And as I've said before, they don't even know what a Protestant is. They say, well, I'm a Baptist, or I'm a Methodist, I'm a Presbyterian, therefore I'm a Protestant. And it goes back to the roots of Protestant, as you'll be quick to point out, comes back to the Reformers. They protested the Vatican. They protested, no, not here, not in our lives. You priests and nuns, stay out. And you Vatican activists, and they no longer protest Rome and the Vatican. They're not Protestants. We're Protestants. And they put together the dots between the biblical prophecies and what's going on in their front door. And most people, particularly professing Protestants, they have no idea what they're up against. They have no idea. They blame it on, corruption. They blame it on people, and they don't see an organized effort to destroy the faith of man, to destroy mankind altogether and bring it under its subjection. And this ministry is very unique. Tony Alamo was specially called, and we've taken this heat for a lot of years, and he has very patiently explained to the world, listen, it's in the Bible, and it's in bed with you. You're living with a Roman canon law here. They're just very clandestine, operating behind the scenes, and very few people have seen it from your vantage point and can understand, because they don't care. Long as it doesn't affect them, they think, or it might a little bit, or they just miss. They blame the elitists, and they blame all these different people that have all money and power and influence, and they're players in all this, of course. But the Vatican doesn't care if you hate all these people, if you understand their terrible activities, as long as you don't connect the dot to them and rebel against their ultimate goal.
And one thing I wanted to mention, Greg, and I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on any of the hundreds of shows, thousands of shows I've done about your ministry maybe over the years, but when I first met Tony, I had really very little to Bible information, to be honest. I didn't read much of the Bible. I picked it up through people coming on my show, and I found them to be, many of these people that came on my show, and I'm talking about Tony, they were kind of preaching to me, and they have this one idea about prophecy, and if it wasn't their way, then go to the highway, and you're not a true Christian, Greg, and all this kind of stuff. And when I first started looking for people in America who understood the secular point of the Vatican like I did, I ran across Tony. And I've been fortunate to interview him probably many, many hours, more than most people. And that's one reason why I want to get him out of prison. I'd like to talk to him again. But he made me feel different. He had this kind of attitude that was so loose, so carefree, and he would compliment me. Greg, you seem, wow, what, I felt different. And he had this attitude that nothing would ever faze him. He got serious when he needed to be, but he saw things that made me go, God, who is this guy? I'd like to talk to him again. And through those conversations, without saying, Greg, you read this part of the Bible, that'll teach, he just allowed me to move in my own path, in a sense, to move the way I should move, as much as I could take. He didn't force me into anything, but he taught me a lot about the secular things in the Vatican that I didn't understand as well. That's why I thought, wow, this guy's something. And I wish people had an opportunity to talk to him as much as I did that weren't in your ministry, because they haven't. They've only read these crazy things about him, which aren't true. Your thoughts?
That's absolutely right. I mean, I came to the ministry. I was convicted for my sins. I was tired of living. I was a practicing Roman Catholic, proud to be a Catholic. I was so convicted for my sins, and I had no power over sin whatsoever. And like so many people, I came and I gave my heart to the Lord. I said the sinner's prayer at the ministry here from the preaching of the gospel. But it was different because once a person gets saved, oftentimes they'll just go on about their merry way, and they'll never. There's people that don't continue on in the Lord for whatever reason. But watching Tony Alamo over the years, and the way he embraced me, and the way he allowed me to grow and to mature, and very open-minded, and was not afraid to correct me if I was wrong in measure, and the way he handled me. And I watched Tony and Susan Lama over the years, and I observed everything in how they treated people, how they presented the gospel, and how they brought fact right in front of your face. Because I would have never known these secular facts about the Vatican if the pastor hadn't done the research and nailed it down and presented it to people like me. And I just wanted to be saved. I wanted to go to heaven. I didn't want to be failing and have no power in my life over sin. I really wanted to be a Christian. And to me, having come out of the Vatican and to have these carnal things that they have done down through the centuries plainly and clearly explained to me, to have former Jesuit priest Alberto Rivera come and explain much of the clandestine activities that he saw and lived and learned himself, gave me the opportunity to see it kind of from where you were coming from, and rounded me out as a Christian. And Tony wasn't just this hard line, like you say, my way or the highway. He gives us a chance to embrace, learn, and grow and experience and check it out for ourselves. He always said, look, don't listen to me. Check it out in the Bible for yourselves. As far as the scriptures, as far as carnally, go and look into history and see the Inquisitions, see the influence in Nazism, see the influence in the world today, see it for yourselves. And I'm with you. I just came from a completely different angle.
Exactly. And you know what we're going to do? We're running out of time for the first half hour here, so I'm going to take a break and come back with Greg Seago on the Investigative Journal at FirstAmendmentRadio.com, back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, welcome back to the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. My guest is Greg Seago of the Alamo Ministry. And I want to remind you to go to freetonyalamo.com. You can read about what happened to this ministry over the years. I put together a petition, and people are signing and leaving their comments. You can go to the petition site by going to the top of the website and clicking on the petition and sign it if you listen to this show. And go to also alamoministries.com and get a lot of their literature. I might add, even though the government's efforts are to wipe this ministry off the face of the earth, they're strong. They're going strong. They get over 400,000 hits a week on their website. I've gotten comments from people all over the world who have gotten to know Tony and the ministry. I'm talking about every point of the globe here. Every place has contacted me. Uganda. We're talking Nigeria, where there's a huge persecution going on of Christians right now, and we should keep them in our prayers. But all over the place, people in New Zealand, Australia, saying this man should be released. And I hope, I want to get to, since Greg has been really following the Trump campaign and talking to people there, now that Trump is going to take over the White House, people have emailed me because I said, well, there's a small window here. We don't know. We understand that I understand at least, and I know Greg does, that the Pope has the final say on who's president. And we know there's a hidden agenda somewhere. We don't know exactly what it is. I think it's our obligation to try and find out. But I said we have a window here with this man. We have a window that maybe God has allowed us now to get some things done. And all we can ask for is time. In God's time, I don't know. But I would rather see Trump there right now than Clinton. I know what they're about and how fast the New World Order would move. Now, I'm not saying that it's all bright and rosy with him, but I want to get your thoughts, Greg, because I'm getting criticized from one end by going, Greg, you're being too hopeful with Trump. And then secondly, I say, well, yes, I have to have some hope in life. I'm not going to give up and just lay down and say no. And I like this little window now where people may listen. It could draw more people to Christ, couldn't it?
Absolutely. And you're right. The Clintons would just bring about this new world order faster. I mean, they're the ones that went after this ministry. It was Bill Clinton that got John Peeler, the former FBI Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms, to try to infiltrate our church, to try to bring it down, to try to assassinate the pastor. Those Clintons are well known for their clandestine activity. How they maintain their popularity is just beyond me. I don't know. Donald Trump, we don't know. We haven't seen. We know the pastor designed jackets for him years ago. What he's all about, I mean, I'd like to think he just came out of nowhere and shocked a lot of insiders from the Vatican. I don't know. But definitely time will tell. And we'd love to present our petition, to Donald Trump. And he claims he wants to fight for Christians that are being persecuted. I wonder if he really knows what that means. We do. And we know that Bill Clinton and that lesbian Attorney General Janet Reno that boasted, and he just says, well, that'll teach people that belong to people, after they've murdered them all, that'll teach people to join what we consider cults. Mm-hmm. We'll show you what time it is. So we know what they're all about, and giving Donald Trump all the benefit of the doubt, we pray that we'll see some action, that he really means, that he will defend Christians across the board.
I agree, and I think this case presented properly to him, which we're going to do, will show us something about the man. Don't you agree?
Absolutely, and I talk to a lot of Trump supporters that, believe me, they are, when they say the evangelicals came out in force, I know it to be true because I lived it. They're saying God is giving America a second chance, and that the Trump administration will turn these things around. And I kind of, I'll believe that when I see it. I love the opportunity to force the issue, and let's see it happen. But they really believe that this 45th president of the United States is going to defend Christianity. And he did in his campaign speeches say he was going to. I'd love to see him take the opportunity and run with it. Although I will,
go ahead.
Underneath it all, I look to the Lord for everything. But he does, he sets up kings, queens, and princes, presidents. The Lord is behind the scenes working in many ways that I don't always know and understand. And but I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, so am I, and that brings me to this point. Yesterday I mentioned this on the show with Bert Krantz, and he liked the idea, and the timing was that we've got a whole bunch of signatures now, and I want to keep this going through the holidays, and then when Trump does get into office, to have a petition and a call for a pardon for Tony, and explaining the persecution this ministry has suffered over the years, explaining the trial to what happened in the trial, what happened to these children, what happened to your property. And I said, one person emailed me and said, well, Greg, you think they're going to look at this case? It's a small case. I said, it's a small case. Do you realize that the civil settlement in Arkansas against your ministry was the highest in the history of that state, over $500 million? So I said, this is a big case. Your thoughts?
This is a landmark case. This case supersedes anything anyone has ever seen. Those that have not looked into it, you have to realize my children were taken away from me with no abuse ever happening to them, no evidence, nothing, simply because I was a member of the ministry. That has never happened in the history of America. That's like taking all these pedophile priests and taking away all the Roman Catholic children because they belong to the Catholic Church. And our pastor was proven innocent really in court when the jury sent the note saying, well, there's no crime committed here, but can we still convict? So this just shows you the bias of the media and people at large. They simply took away all those properties and children, homes, schools, churches, everything simply based on association with the ministry. This case is huge. It set a precedence in America. And so you haven't seen nothing yet. I mean, believe me, those of us that are fighting the good fight of faith, the Lord will endorse our pastor. Those that sit quietly in the shadows, they're in for a crude awakening very soon.
Yeah, and so my timing is to get this petition, which is online now, and also to go out and maybe do hand petitions during the holidays, as well as giving Trump a chance to get his feet in the White House, and then present it in a very timely manner in the first months of his presidency with a very nice document that explains this story, and asking, in all fairness, with all the people that have been pardoned in the past, this man deserves it more than most, and deserves it to be put on the number one list here to get to get a pardon. And I think we can at least, this is at the least we could do for this guy, because I can't imagine he's sitting there. He's 82 years old now, near blind. He's almost blind. But he's upbeat still. I mean, I still get messages. He's trying to. I've got a couple of messages where he's worried about me more than he's worried about him. I'm going, what are you talking about, Tony? You're in jail. Come on, don't worry about me or the people in your ministry. And he's unbelievable still. The messages I've gotten through other people about this. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, I know what you mean. And one development has been since he is in prison. He's not nearly blind. He's totally blind now and has been for years. And his health, but he stays so upbeat, and he totally trusts and relies in the Lord, and he just constantly sows mercy. And he's going to reap. The Bible says whatever you sow, you're going to reap. When you sow seeds of mercy, as he has for 51 years since he turned to the Lord, those seeds grow into giant trees and fruit trees and everything, and he has a huge harvest coming. And the Bible says if you sow abundantly, you reap abundantly. He has a large harvest of mercy coming. Woe unto people that don't sow mercy. There won't be any mercy for them to reap in these last days that we're living.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention this, that tomorrow I'm going to have Deborah Andrasek on, but on Friday I've gotten a letter from an inmate that's in the same cell block as Tony, who tells an incredible story about how he's been helped by Tony and has been given some hope in his life. And the man states that Tony's constantly trying to help these prisoners and teaching them about the Bible, etc., etc. So he's still ministering the best he can under the circumstances. And I want to read that on a Friday to everyone, just so that people can hear, he's still the same in prison. And I want to get him out because he deserves it. Go ahead.
Well, he has quite a prison ministry. He has never forgotten prisoners. He ministers to prisoners all around the world and has for decades. When he was in prison on these trumped-up IRS charges years ago, he won so many souls from the Bones gang and all these hardened criminals that he was in prison with. So many people's lives have been turned around. And in fact, we were just reading last night a piece of literature called Do I Offend You? Are You Ashamed of Me? And in it, it's got a full color picture of a group of, I'd say, at least 10 prisoners all holding up Pastor Tony's literature and how their lives were changed because of the way that he has ministered to them. And he doesn't just preach a message at them and, hey, believe this way, just believe me. he takes care of their commissary. He puts money on their books so that they can have different things that they normally wouldn't have because they have no families to help them out. I have seen so much where people that in prison have written to Tony, and he makes sure that the prisoners' families outside the prison, that they are given Christmas toys for their children, clothing, and all the necessary things, food, all the necessary things for life. And Tony doesn't just talk the talk. He really walks the walk. And he's ministered to these prisoners, I'm telling you, worldwide, around the globe, and has won so many souls that way. And the ones in prison when he was in under the phony IRS charges, these heavyweight gang leaders, they said, what won us to the Lord isn't so much what you said, it's what you did that won our souls to the Lord. And so, yeah, I'm very excited to hear you read this letter on Friday.
And also, send me that that document you were talking about. If you can,
Sure, man. I wish I could go through the archives of all the souls he's won.
No, that one thing you said, that one the article you had. Do you
Sure.
Send me that so I can look at it, because I haven't seen that. Well, we got about 10 minutes left here, Greg, and I want to leave it up to you at this point. I think we talked about what the possibilities with Trump. The question I have is, when we, as we move through this world, we find ourselves, when you really see the door open up and the truth about our country, the world, what's happening, and you said at the beginning of your show, this is a fight between God and Satan. It made me go back and start reading all the stuff in the Bible that made, I like to go back, and I was reading about Abel, Cain and Abel. And the one thing I found was, I remember reading that story years ago, and now when I read it, I have a whole different perspective. So what I've come to understand is, even though I feel as a novice in the Bible, I'm picking places and things out that mean something so much more to me now than they did when I read them years ago. It was kind of just reading it as if it was something I was given a text in a class. Read this and then decide, blah blah blah. Now it has some kind of meaning to me. So I kind of think the Bible is kind of a living book that is meant, that God maybe says, look, you may not understand it now, but if you keep going, I will give you the patience, I will give you the strength, I'll give you the knowledge, I'll give you the intelligence to figure it out. And I think it's something between God and me more than it is people shoving things down my throat saying, this is the exact prophecy, and only this church knows, the Seventh-day Adventists know this, and that's the way it is. And I can't see it that way. I've sat with these people. I've sat with many different Christians, and I just like to take it in, and in the end, try to figure it out myself too. Don't you agree that it's kind of a close relationship with God the more you read this book? And it's not that important sometimes to, if somebody has a different opinion about a certain little thing in the Bible, why should that bring us apart? And I see Christians fight over these things, and that's not what it's meant to be, I think. What's your thoughts?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. That's perfect. That is just perfect. You may be young in the Lord, but you definitely have depth and wisdom there, because the Bible, to many people, is intellectual. It's a book of do's and don'ts, rules, do this, don't do that, you can do this, you can't do that, restrictions, and that's not what the Bible is all about. And because so many professing Christians, they may have even had a born-again experience, but they never matured in the Lord. And they've learned the book, but they never really came to know the author. They never really learned to walk with the Lord. They just read the book and, I can quote chapter and verse, and I'm smarter in the Bible than you are. And I know prophecy better than you do. And it's a pride thing. And people have never matured, and they've forgotten what it's like to be in darkness. And I was telling you on the break, the pastor gave me the space. Now listen, Greg, I gave you space to learn and to mature and assimilate these things and learn. And, you got to be not so hard on people. You have to back off and let people, sometimes they're going to learn at a different rate, at a different pace than you did.
Exactly. And you were talking to me at the break about how you grew up with many of these Christians for 40 years now, and how at times you were gung-ho and trying to get people to understand things in one day, and how you had to learn over time to give people that space, correct? And tell us about your progress.
Well, if it hadn't have been for Pastor Alamo, I would have been, every time I get on a high horse, the Lord takes me down. I start thinking that God's gift to mankind or something. I'm reminded very quickly to look at the pit that I was taken out of. And Pastor Alamo has been very strict in the ministry, particularly with the older ones, to give the young Christians space. Let them, they just going to take little feedings and little bits of milk, a little bit at a time. Back off them and give them their space to learn and grow. And you come and you explain something in the Bible and they just don't receive it. Leave them alone. Let them think about it. Let them pray about it. Let them digest things as their understanding grows and as they learn. Just leave them alone. That has been Pastor Tony's, one of his big jobs, is to keep us older ones from getting all on our high horses and shoving things down people's throats and being patient, because Tony Alamo is so open-minded and so patient, and he's just been so godly, and he's constantly remind us, listen, as I have been patient with you guys, so you should be patient with the younger ones also.
Yeah, and my story is similar, but in the secular world of understanding the Vatican, I felt as a journalist, I went to the I was there, I learned all this stuff, and when I came back to the States and tried to tell people about it, I was very overbearing. I was a know-it-all. People looked at me. I tried to get them to know everything about the Jesuits in in 1 hour, and was not very kind to them, to be honest with you. And I learned the hard way that I did turn on some people, but how many people did I turn off because of my attitude of a know-it-all guy who had lived the experience of the Vatican? And over the years, by actually getting closer to the Bible, I've learned to kind of back off and to try to read a person before I try to show, tell them some things. And I find giving them little bits and pieces to a person that understands nothing about the Vatican is better than trying to shove it down their throat. So I know what you're talking about, and I hope I've become better at it over the years and learned something. And I've taken kind of the me out of the whole equation. At one point I thought I was one of the few journalists that could figure this out, and I'm going to tell the world. And boy, did that backfire sometimes,
Right. And, we look at even Joseph, the patriarch Joseph in the Bible. And the pastor wrote a piece of literature and how his brothers set him up and sold him as a slave and all these different things. And where did he learn to have forgiveness toward his brothers? Where did he learn such compassion? And how was God able to use him in such a mighty way? It was through the long years of crying through the bars of Pharaoh's prison. Sometimes we have to be taken down and just have, like Moses was on the backside of the desert for 40 years, having the Moses taken out of Moses before he could emerge as this mighty pillar of strength, this flame of God. And it's a learning and it's a growth process. And that's what the command of Jesus is. When you get saved, you've come to the Lord and your sins are forgiven. That's great. Now, deny thyself. Take up the cross daily, this cross of self-denial, Jesus is saying, and follow me. And then you're saved. Then you have eternal life. And so this growth process is everyone. Tony Alamo will tell you his story, how he ran to the news media. You've got to print this story. Jesus Christ is coming back to earth, and I'm telling you. And he said in that office, he thought, if I can't preach the Lord in him, I'll beat the devil out of him. So we've all had this experience, and it's very needful and important, because you cannot have a ministry from the Lord, a powerful ministry. You have to pay your dues. You've got to go through this breaking process, and it's not a fun, pretty thing at times.
Yeah, good point. We got about, let's see here, a minute and a half to go. And I did want to mention to people, again, to go to freepastortonyalamo.com, a website I got started. And I wanted to mention there was a guy named Robbie who came out of nowhere as a Christian to help me put this together, and I want to thank him again publicly. And he's been a good inspiration to watch. You know, I was going through, it was almost like he put him in my life or something, this guy from Oregon. I said, I'm going to do a website on Tony tomorrow. And I didn't know how to do it. But all of a sudden, this Robbie comes out of the woodwork and helps me put it together. And I want to thank him tremendously. And I know that he's praying for everybody as well, and getting the word out to everybody he talks to. And he's been a good inspiration to say that, you know, there are people out there listening to us, Greg.
Absolutely. I thank the Lord for Robbie. I thank the Lord for you. Thank the Lord for
one more thing. I met a guy here where I live near Chula Vista, and he's a born-again Christian, and we started talking about this. He went to the website, and he says, you know what? 20 years ago, I knew about the Alamo ministry there. I read their stuff, and they were instrumental in getting me going. And then I tried to find them, and I couldn't. What happened to Tony? Incredible story. And he's going out to his church and maybe wants me to speak at the church here about it. So the word is getting out. Greg, we're all out of time. Thanks for being on the show. We'll have you on in a couple weeks, okay?
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Okay. That was Greg Seago. See you tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie, with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character, as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.